I know, they actually just keep getting longer, and this part of the longest lost media iceberg ever is a doozy. Today we're looking at the 4th tier of this iceberg and another 200 entries or so. So shout out to you guys for sticking it through with this series, but if you're new here, that's alright too. Come in. What am I even saying? But yeah, this is the 4th part of an incredibly long iceberg series. You can catch parts 1 through 3 right here. We've got a whole playlist all set up if you want to binge those before this one, but if not, that's alright too. Stick around for this one and jump back to the other parts if you're at all curious. But let me stop rambling and let's just jump back into the immense lost media iceberg. 6 Days in Fallujah. So this is a title with a very long development, which is still going on to this day, with gameplay videos being posted actually very recently, despite it beginning production in the late 2000s, with it being a first-person tactical shooter surrounding the real-world second battle of Fallujah from 2004, which lasted for a total of 6 days, hence the title. However, this was quite controversial at the time, and in 2009, Konami announced that they would no longer be publishing the title, and the game was also later put on hold as the original developer Atomic Games went bankrupt. However, the game isn't actually cancelled, although very early builds of the game are seemingly lost. But from what it looks like, the game will release sometime soon, possibly even in 2023. Jamie Stewart Sex Book. So this is referring, at least I think so, to a specific book written by American musician Jamie Stewart, a memoir titled Anything That Moves, which I believe is on this list because it was either never released despite it being written a while ago, or it was just never officially published. Either way, the book is releasing on April 4th, 2023, according to Amazon. Allo Policia. This one is pretty obscure as it's something that happened in Bolivia, and I could only find a Spanish lost media article on the subject. Basically, it's a lost news report of an assault on a young boy that was playing Pokemon Go in a town square, with the evidence for this being some graffiti left on the scene allegedly by the perpetrators, with this screenshot of it, translating to something like "Hello Police." But other than the fact that this was apparently broadcast on the Telepais news program on the Unitel channel, not much else is known about this case. OKKO Crossover Nexus Original Version. For the Cartoon Network series OKKO Let's Be Heroes, there was a crossover episode released showcasing 4 different Cartoon Network properties in one 11-minute episode, released in October of 2018. However, this wasn't the original version of the episode, as it was actually meant to be twice as long, and a lot of what was meant to happen can actually be seen in some storyboards from the original version. Also, if you haven't seen it yet, it featured Ben from Ben 10, Raven from Teen Titans Go, and Garnet from Steven Universe. Strange Kentucky People. This refers to a very strange tribute tape that was given to pro wrestler Chris Jericho in 1994, which he described in an autobiography, and it was given to him by a female fan who said it contained all of his matches in the Smoky Mountain Wrestling League. Or promotion, or whatever it is, I don't know, I don't really know anything about wrestling, but anyway, not important. Because that's not actually what was in the tapes. In reality, it was a very bizarre tape which is now referred to as Strange Kentucky People. Why? Well, in the video, the fan proclaims her love for him while doing some sort of strange dance routine, as well as other people there doing other, weird And apparently, according to Jericho, the tape actually did get into the hands of other people collecting these kinds of obscure tapes, but no footage has ever surfaced from it as of now. Polish TV hijacking. Not the actual name, but yeah, I'm not gonna try to pronounce that, sorry. So here we've got yet another TV hijacking case. These are always endlessly fascinating to me, and again, it's also completely lost. However, unlike a lot of these cases, this time the perpetrators were identified, those being a group of astronomers located at the University of Turin, who in 1985 created a device capable of interrupting a television broadcast, and yeah, it was a pretty complicated setup, but basically on September 14th, 1985, they used it to hijack a Polish news network, after which they displayed this simple message, of course in Polish, translating to, quote, "Enough price increases, lies, and repressions. Solidarity Torin." However, as of now, there is no footage of the hijacking, and only recreations are available. And as for those responsible, well, they were arrested shortly after and sentenced to 1 year in prison. Grand Theft Auto Brotherhood. So here's an interesting one for my GTA fans out there. This is something I hadn't even heard of, but I believe this is referring to a specific and obscure YouTube video and mod for GTA, possibly the first one, although it's kind of unclear really, because not much is known about this at all, and I've only seen one article on this from 2007. But basically it shows this weird mod that when downloaded would actually infect the person's computer with a virus, and the video has since been lost, as well as the mod itself, and there is only this one screenshot that I could find. Kmart CDI training game. Everyone's gotta have a lost CDI training game these days, it seems. So yeah, apparently Kmart is no different, as according to a post from 2022 on the Lost Media Wiki forums, there was a CDI training program from the 90s that was used for employees of Kmart, and the user describes that on their second day of training, there were CDI discs that were used. However, they don't really remember much specifically about the program, except for one of them, which they describe in the post saying, quote, "I only remember one of the discs with reasonable detail. It mostly centered around the big Kmart format that had been recently introduced and rolled out. The new format also ushered in the Martha Stewart Everyday product line, which was yet another big, haha, see what I did there, focus of the disc. However, it seems this style of training wasn't used very frequently, or was cancelled not long after it was initially used back then, as there isn't really much evidence of its existence left at all." Nina unrated deleted videos. So there are quite a few entries of deleted videos from certain YouTubers on this list, and this tier specifically, and one of those is Nina Unrated, who has a channel mostly dedicated to like fitness and vlogs as far as I can tell, and like many other YouTubers who've been around for a while, she has some lost and deleted content. And apparently there are some specific drama related videos that have been deleted which don't have any re-uploads. Glover 2. So here's a game we talked about in the Cancelled Media Iceberg. Go check that out after this if you haven't seen it, by the way, and are looking for, more interesting Iceberg content. But yeah. So anyway, this was a cancelled sequel to a platformer from 1998 called Glover, where you control a glove character, surprise surprise, and basically just try to get a ball to the end of a stage. But the second game was never actually finished or released. That being said, it was almost completed, about 80 to 85% or so before it was cancelled. Now, it's not exactly lost though, because a playable prototype build of the game was actually found. I Am Rich. So first we had Baby Shaker, which is still probably the weirdest app I've seen to date, but this is up there with one of the dumbest. The app was titled I Am Rich and was released in 2008 for the low price of $9.99.99, or more simply put, $1,000. However, the app was only available for a day before it was taken down, and surprisingly, somehow 8 people were dumb enough to buy it. What was in the app, you might ask? Well, just some simple text reading, "I am rich, I deserve it, I am good, healthy, and successful." Great scam, 10 out of 10. And there were more versions of this that came out over the years, including a light version for you brokies out there for only $10. Oh boy! I'm sorry you had to hear that. But yeah, not only did almost no one buy the app, it's also 14 years old at this point, so no wonder there's no working version of it. But from what we know, we're not missing much here. Logan Paul in the Forest PC version. So we all know about the infamous video of Logan Paul in a certain Japanese forest. But did you know there was also a game made based on it? Yeah, I had no clue, but apparently there was a game released on the Xbox Marketplace where you could play as Logan and walk around the forest and of course find the dead guy. However, the game was removed from the store for violating its policies, and it hasn't been available on there since. And I guess there was even more of these games made based on this video, like on the Google Play Store and stuff, which is kind of wild. I mean, it's honestly a rabbit hole in its own right. But the title of this entry is the PC version because it was actually also released on GameJolt, and actually the game is still available for download on the site for PC, so I mean, check it out I guess if you want. I don't know. 12-ounce mouse pilot. This cartoon that aired in the mid-2000s for 2 seasons on Adult Swim is about an alcoholic mouse named Fitz, who suffers from amnesia and begins to recover some of his lost memories about his dark past. But it's also known for its really crude and simplistic art style. And like I said, the show ran on Adult Swim for 2 seasons in the early 2000s before it got a 3rd season in 2020, with a few other webisodes and specials here and there. But what we're here for is the lost original pilot, which was briefly discussed in an interview in 2021 on a website called Corndog Central. However, not much is known about the episode besides some small voice cast changes, and according to one of the editors, John Breston, the pilot is lost for good, as no backups of it were ever made. Hell's Kitchen JR episodes. Everyone knows about Hell's Kitchen, Gordon Ramsay, donkeys, the lamb sauce, all that. But this one is kind of obscure, unless you're really caught up on the Hell's Kitchen lore, I guess. Anyway, I think this refers to a certain contestant whose scenes were completely removed from the show for some reason, specifically from season 3. The contestant's name apparently was JR. Not the same JR from season 13, this guy right here. And a YouTuber named Blue Knight made a whole video about this cool little mystery, so if you want more info on this, feel free to check that out. But essentially, I guess this guy was disqualified shortly after the filming of these episodes, and was subsequently cut from the season, and can only be seen in a few cuts. As to why he was removed from the show, well, it's been said that he spread some harmful rumors about another contestant named Joanna, and even leaked spoilers for the season before it actually dropped. So basically, any real scenes involving him cooking and stuff like that are lost, due to them being removed and cut from the actual show. Plafo the Platformer. So this lost game, made in GameMaker Lite 8.1, is your standard fake platformer that just turns into a screamer. Classic. Not much else to say on this one other than that it's lost and it's kind of an obscure one. So all we have are screenshots of what it looked like, but other than that, we know it likely released in 2018, but that's about it. Whitehall Palace mural portrait of Henry VIII. One of the most well-known depictions of King Henry VIII is from a mural created by Hans Holbein the Younger, which he painted in 1537. However, unfortunately, the original was lost forever due to a fire in Whitehall Palace in 1698. Although by the time the painting had been copied a few times, and so recreations of it were made, which is why the depiction of Henry VIII is still well known and used by painters for decades as a reference material. Although the original is the largest one, having been a life-size depiction of the royal family painted on the wall, which is now lost forever. Windows 1.0 Byte build. So this very early and lost build of Windows was actually first shown off in a December issue of Byte magazine from 1983. Bruh, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't even know Windows existed back then. This is like dinosaur tier OS right here. But in 2022, an image of a floppy disk that actually had the demonstration on it was posted to Twitter. But sadly, the data from the disk was not able to be recovered. However, we do have screenshots of what it looked like, but the build itself remains lost. Andre 3000 solo album. Andre 3000, also known as Andre Lauren Benjamin, is an American rapper and singer who's been active since the early 90s, so no surprises here, there's unreleased and lost music. Specifically though, this is referring to a solo album that went unreleased, which was described in a Vulture article from 2013, which stated that his publicist said about the album, quote, "Regarding reports of a specific plan to release an album in early 2014, there is no official confirmation on that report. And it looks like this album has still gone on unreleased to this day." Horse the Band Ghost EP. So Ghost EP is, well, an EP of 3 tracks created by Horse the Band while on tour in 2008, and apparently only had a very limited release of about 250 copies. And all of the unsold copies the band had in their possession were actually lost while traveling on their way to Turkey, making this some of the rarest music from the band. Even the master hard copy was lost due to a hard drive malfunction, but not much else is known about it, and it's still completely lost, although there are definitely copies out there somewhere in the world, and apparently one was even briefly available on eBay. Score. So I think this is talking about a little known and obscure arcade game from 1976 called Score, or Score the Love Machine. The only info I could find on this was on a website called Arcade History, and I'll just go ahead and read the whole trivia section, since it's really all we've got. Released in September 1976, the game was actually another extension of the Destruction Derby concept, with the cars replaced by bar patrons. Set in a singles bar, the object of the game was to score with as many members of the opposite sex as possible. When the on-screen Lothario made contact with the object of his or her affections, a heart appeared on screen. A cocktail version of the game came in a heart-shaped cabinet. For those who weren't satisfied with the mere thrill of conquest, Exidy also built an optional dispenser that could be attached to the game, belching out tokens in response to high scores. Despite the innovative concept, amorous bar patrons understandably preferred the real thing, and the game failed to catch fire. So yeah, pretty ambitious gameplay concept for the time, I guess. Chilean Independence Act. So this is kind of interesting, but also a little confusing because the Chilean Declaration of Independence, created back in 1818, was said to have been damaged at the Palace of Real Audiencia of Santiago, leading to additional copies being made, one of which was also destroyed in the 1973 Chilean coup d'etat. So I guess this copy and the original manuscript are lost, or destroyed rather, although there is a version preserved at the National Congress of Chile. SCP Necklace of Greed. So yeah, SCP, probably most of you know about this, but quick rundown of it, it's basically a collectively written thing where people describe these strange entities or objects. It can be anything really, to be honest, that's classified as an SCP, but usually it's supposed to be creepy in some sort of way. It's kind of like the OG version of the Backrooms lore, that kind of thing. So this refers to old original versions of the SCP-048 story, because it's kind of a meme in the community, I guess, because most of the stories that were submitted for it were bad. And so if the moderation team, or whoever runs the forums, I guess, doesn't think it's good enough, it gets deleted, which happened a few times, leaving some of these stories lost. One such story was about a talking dog named Joey. The next one was called Edge of Twilight, but it was deleted not even 24 hours later. But this specific entry is referring to one called the Necklace of Greed, also deleted, and basically all of these stories were lost after they were removed, except for Joey, which has been archived. Molly Mosque Vogue Fashion Shoot 1996. So for whatever reason, Vogue magazine decided to do a fashion shoot inside of a mosque located in Jen, Mali. And the footage from this shoot has not surfaced as far as I can tell. But we do know that Muslims there were pretty outraged by the way the models were dressed, and after this incident, all non-Muslims were actually banned from entering the mosque ever again. Squadron Leader X. Created back in 1943, this World War II film titled Squadron Leader X is about a German pilot who disguises himself as a British soldier in order to commit a false flag operation, which involves some sort of bombing. But not much else is known about the plot, because the film is actually lost, although we do know that the film did get some pretty good reviews at the time, but since its initial theatrical run, it hasn't been seen since. No Love Deep Web Cuts Songs. So the album No Love Deep Web is the second of the experimental group Death Grips, released back in 2012. There's quite a bit of notable things about this album, including its controversial cover art, but we're here to focus on some lost and cut songs. As in the final release, there are 13 tracks, totaling about 45 minutes in length. but initially it was reported that they actually recorded 20 tracks, leaving 7 of them seemingly lost, unless they were possibly reused for other releases. Dumont Television Network. So this is actually one of the earliest American TV networks with broadcasting, beginning for the company in 1946. And one of the forays of the network was into news broadcasting, which it had made multiple failed attempts at. And their final attempt, only a few years before they would cease creating content, was in 1954 to 1955 with Dumont Evening News, which was a simple 15-minute series reporting the daily news, which typically aired from 7:15 to 7:30. However, the last episode aired on April 1st of 1955, and no episodes from this series have ever been located. Walt Disney performing as Mickey Mouse. A lot of you hardcore Disney fans probably heard about this one. Essentially, in the earlier days of the Mickey Mouse shorts, Walt Disney would occasionally physically act out the movements he wanted the animators to reference when animating, which was done, for example, for Mickey's movements in 1939's The Pointer. Not only did he just show them what to do though, they actually recorded the whole thing. Although Walt was apparently really far away. Even still, apparently he thought the whole thing must have been really cringy, because when people looked for the footage like years later, it was gone, most likely deleted by Walt himself. And he never did any other appearances like this on camera ever again, as far as we know. Lucky 7. Yet another TV pirate incident, one of the most interesting and mysterious in fact, but not in the way you might think. It's not your standard hijacking story. Rather, this was something that took place in the late 70s from April 18th to the 21st of 1978 on an unused local channel called Channel 7 in Syracuse, New York, which some unknown figures used to broadcast various things, including films that ranged from more family-friendly material like Star Trek and Rocky, to some more, well, adult-oriented films. But if all they did was play some movies, we wouldn't be talking about it now, would we? Because in between playing the films and TV shows, a figure could actually be seen wearing a gas mask. But besides that, and the fact that everything had been done fairly professionally, with their own channel logo and jingle, we really don't know much else, because all of it is lost. Although it is possible that someone may have taped the event way back then, but at this point it seems unlikely footage of any kind will ever surface. But I mean, hey, you'd never know. And it does seem that whoever was responsible for this, and what they even did, will also remain unknown, considering it happened so long ago. Kerry Von Erich vs. Colonel De Beers. This is an alleged wrestling match that took place on November 12, 1988 between professional wrestlers Colonel De Beers and Kerry Von Erich, which happened at the Showboat Hotel in Las Vegas for the American Wrestling League. And it is most known for an incident involving De Beers removing Kerry's boot, exposing that his right foot had been amputated. Although this event has come under some scrutiny as there is no actual footage of the event, and most involved claimed it never occurred in the first place. But Kerry did keep the amputation a secret from most everyone up until his tragic death in 1993 by It had occurred due to a surgery and complications with the healing process after a severe motorcycle accident. But for those who believe that the match did actually happen, they speculate that to keep the injury a secret, Kerry might have requested that the match not actually be shown and the footage never released. Although if it did happen, it's possible there could be some fan recording of it out there somewhere. Samsung Doorways Family Guy. Okay, what's going on with these weird Family Guy games? But really, this was a Samsung AR project that was only shown off and playable one time at an in-person event in Berlin in 2018. And it's an augmented reality experience, meaning it changes the environment in real life through looking at it in your phone. So basically it took players who tried the game through Peter Griffin's house, having them help the characters out with tasks around the house. But this was the only time that the game was ever seen, and it can't be downloaded or anything like that, making this a lost and likely cancelled project. Taxi Driver, the game. Alright, so this is just crazy, but at the same time I'm not that shocked, because it was pretty much the normal thing to do in the early to mid 2000s, to take an old but beloved crime drama film and turn it into a just weird PS2 title. Just look at other games from the time, with The Godfather, Scarface, The Warriors, you name it. The game was being developed by Papaya Studios and was planned to be published by Majesco, with the game centering around the movie's character Travis as he goes on his vengeful rampage in New York, just like in the film. Although this time with there being an open world and more missions and side content. So basically yes, it's a GTA clone, surprise surprise. However, there were other interesting aspects, such as violent manhunt / Punisher-like executions, which actually required button combos from the player. However, also the development became quite troubled with the director Martin Scorsese not wanting anything to do with the project, understandably considering it did kind of undermine the whole way violence was meant to be portrayed in that film. Not to mention it really doesn't even need to exist, but that being said, I still would have loved to see it, as both a fan of GTA and Manhunt clones, as well as a big fan of the film. Although sadly it was never finished, with it being suddenly cancelled in 2005, as other projects from Majesco were failing financially. Still, it's a very interesting cancelled title, and one that deserves a full deep dive for sure. PK100 Electronic Keyboard. This is one of many, and I mean many, unlicensed accessories for the NES, this being an electronic keyboard made by a company called Bitcorp, that would have come with a cartridge also. But besides this, not much else is known, and there aren't even any images of it that I could find. The NES did also get a Miracle Piano accessory though, and a cartridge as well, which is probably pretty similar to this lost and obscure product. Medusa Painting. One of the earliest known works of the 15th century famous painter Leonardo da Vinci is one that is talked about in a biography discussing his works and life, although the painting itself is lost, that being known as Medusa, which remains quite a mysterious piece, with only descriptions of it being available, such as in that same biography where it reads, quote, "To think what he could paint upon it that would frighten everyone that saw it, having the effect of the head of Medusa. So he brought for this purpose to his room, which no one entered but himself, lizards, grasshoppers, serpents, butterflies, locusts, bats, and other strange animals of the kind. And from them all he produced an animal so horrible and fearful that it seemed to poison the air with its fiery breath. This he represented coming out of some dark broken rocks, with venom issuing from its open jaws, fire from its eyes, and smoke from its nostrils. A monstrous and horrible thing indeed." So yeah, quite the description. Definitely makes this lost painting sound all the more interesting, really. Law & Order Unstoppable. So Law & Order Special Victims Unit is a very long-running TV police drama series that started airing back in September of 1999, and is apparently one of, if not the longest-running scripted TV series ever in the United States. So yeah, it's bound to happen that there will be some controversial episodes, especially when a lot of the cases and storylines are inspired by real-life crimes, news reports, or general stories and people. And one of these episodes is called Unstoppable, which was produced in 2016 for the 18th season, set to air sometime in October, with the episode being heavily inspired by Donald Trump, who was running for office at the time, as a similar character in the episode was also running for office and was also being accused of sexual misconduct. And because of this and other controversies related to Trump appearing during this time when the episode was meant to come out, it was never released and likely never will be. And all we have from the episode is a short 15-second promo, mostly showing the actor Gary Cole, who was portraying the main character. Comedy. This was an ABC sitcom that aired for just one episode in December of 2000, with the show being similar to something like Tosh.0 or other internet-based shows, as it showcased humorous clips, and apparently 5 episodes were filmed and made, but only the one was ever released due to it receiving poor ratings. And not even the entire pilot episode has been found, as only clips are available as of now. 22 Poems. That is the translated title of this Yiddish collection of poems published and released by author Yehiel Dinur. Sorry if I butcher the names here, I'm sure I will. Anyway, this guy was a Jewish author and Holocaust survivor who wrote additional books later on in his life about these experiences, but his first work is the collection in question, written in 1931. And interestingly, this book is now lost, due to the author going to great lengths to have it destroyed and basically wiped from history, basically denouncing any material before he arrived at Auschwitz in 1943. Even many years later, and for decades, he would destroy any copies that he could find, including a time in 1953 where he borrowed the book at a New York public library only to destroy it, as well as doing a similar thing in 1993 at a university library in Israel. However, it seems that there are copies that still survive out there, but they are only accessible to a short list of academics and not for just anyone to see, at least for now. Piko and Chico Shoda Idol no Otogoshi. So this one was kind of hard to find info on, but the little I did was quite disturbing to say the least. So if you know what Boku no Pico is, well, I really honestly don't know how to describe this show without getting demonetized. But let's just say it involves a relationship between two male characters, one of which is seemingly much too young. Yeah. But that's an anime that actually a lot of people already know about, made reactions to it years ago, all that. People call it like the 2 girls 1 cup of anime, which is probably an accurate description. But this entry refers to a spin-off light novel created by a company called Tinkerbell, and it appears on the visual novel database with the description reading, quote, an alternate canon from the anime where Piko and Chico are Shoda idols, and the protagonist acts as their manager. And besides that, it says that the playtime is about 8 hours, at least from a vote from one person. And it also shows that the game released for Windows in 2010 only in Japan, and actually includes screenshots, but it seems the game itself is lost. Frikipedia. So there are a ton of parody sites of Wikipedia. One of these is a Spanish one called La Frikipedia, also known sometimes as the Geekpedia or the Freakypedia in English. It launched way back in 2005, and it's claimed by some that this is actually the first Wikipedia parody, which it very well could be, and the site actually had over 8,000 articles before it closed down for good in 2015, leaving most of the contents lost, probably for good. Rainbot deleted videos. Okay, so Rainbot is a really popular horror YouTuber with 1.3 million subs, and I haven't really been keeping up with her channel recently, but I do remember watching a lot of her early videos back in the day, around the same time I got into Jorge's and Nexpo's content, which is really cool. But tangent aside, I'm not exactly sure on how many or what specific videos are deleted and lost, although there are some re-uploads of her content on YouTube, such as this one about Randy Stare. Al Shamshun. Pretty interesting one here, especially for big fans of The Simpsons, as this is an adaptation of the series done by a Saudi media company back in 2005 that made many changes to the show and did it to make it more suitable for Middle Eastern audiences and TV regulations, with the show having a total of 52 episodes produced. Although only 34 of them would ever air, leaving the last 18 of them lost to time. This is due to low viewership and criticism to the changes made, as it really drastically changed the show. And on top of that, it was never released to home media, making it even more obscure. Tensho X Toho Project. Here we have a collaborative OVA I think I talked about in that Lost Anime video from years ago. I don't really remember actually, it's been a while, but this is basically 2 IPs, Anime Tensho, a mascot of Animate, and the Toho Project, which are a series of bullet hell anime inspired games. And the project wasn't cancelled or anything, it was actually produced by Ufotable, a pretty famous animation studio, and was later shown off at a private screening at one of their cafes in 2010 with no cameras or anything allowed. But a DVD release was actually planned for January 2011, and it's unknown if it was actually ever sold or not, because the OVA is still lost. Apparently though, there were also additional private screenings later on, but today all we have are the storyboards, some screenshots, and promotional videos. Dean Quixote. Here we have an indie film from 2000 with little known about it, as it was never officially released, although we do have a trailer and some synopses which give us an idea. One reviewer gives it a 10 out of 10 on IMDb, while another gives it a 3 out of 10, and describes it as the tale of a young struggling artist who doesn't realize they have any talent. So then, how are their reviews, you might be wondering? Well, it was screened at least once in 2000, and funnily enough, the soundtrack actually did get a release, but not the actual film, and it seems unlikely that it ever will actually be put out. But we have been wrong about these kinds of cases in the past, so who knows. Homenzino. Probably butchered that, but it translates in Portuguese to Little Man, with this being an alleged Venezuelan game created in 1995 by a terrorist group called 3411. Yeah, quite the story here. And the rumor goes that it was a lost horror title about the president of Venezuela at the time, Carlos Andres Perez. Basically, in the game you can talk to these little men, these white figures that talk to and ridicule the president. So I think you play as him or something, with several endings to the game that are possible, including some pretty gruesome fates and deaths of the president. It was also said that the game was very dark, disturbing, and obscure, with only about 200 copies made and distributed. However, it seems this is merely a gaming urban legend, and definitely an interesting one, I'll give it that. And if you're not brand new to this series, you've probably heard about EqualRep. I've talked about him a few times. He's actually the creator of this Iceberg, and he actually asked around in a Venezuelan lost media Discord server, and it seems like this alleged terrorist organization called 3411 doesn't even exist at all. So yeah, this whole thing most likely doesn't actually exist. Leisure Suit Larry 8, Lust in Space. Wow, how are there so many of these games? Not judging, but if you don't know, there is a game series called Leisure Suit Larry, which I think Wikipedia describes best as an adult-themed sex comedy video game series, with the first release being way back in 1987. And the 8th installment here, though, was announced back in 1998, before being cancelled only a year later, leaving any unfinished builds of the game lost. And we know quite a bit about the plot, which was revealed by game developer Al Lowe, who said, quote, "After Larry was taken away in the spaceship at the end of Leisure Suit Larry 7, Love for Sale, he awoke to find himself in what he considered heaven, a world of disco balls, 70s music, and beautiful women who constantly wanted him to make love to them. What's not to like?" But besides that, it was also meant to be the first 3D game in the series, and really the only thing we have even close to footage of the game is a test video showcasing the 3D model of Larry. OG Cemetery shirt video. Okay, so this is going to be real short because it was very hard to find anything on this. Luckily, it was featured in another Iceberg video made by Yoshimi, shout out to him. Basically, it's for an iceberg about a group called Haunted Mound, which has a member named Cemetery, and I think this is some sort of lost promo video related to him. Yeah, don't got too much else on this, sorry. Anyone who knows more about this group though, or this specific piece of lost media, feel free to share down below. Us/we. Again, another kind of obscure music related one. It's a Bandcamp album that was only uploaded the one time and then was taken down with no re-uploads. Although it's known to be a dark ambient instrumental that apparently was something like 24 hours long, with 42 tracks. Little Big Planet 2 Teacher Pack. So this is just basically an unreleased DLC pack for Little Big Planet 2 that was announced but never actually came out, and I guess apparently it was meant to be used as like a learning aid in schools. At least that was their intention with this pack, as it featured levels made with inputs of educators and teachers or something like that. AT&T Dolphin Tales soundtrack. So this is a rather famous dolphin show that played in Georgia from 2011 to 2016, and was actually sponsored by AT&T for some reason. But still, a lot of people were big fans, not only of the performances of the dolphins, but also the music, which was actually meant to be released. Although because the show actually shut down, they never actually came out, but there are still recordings of the live shows. However, the studio recordings of the soundtracks didn't surface for quite some time, but in October of 2021, a YouTube channel called Artsy Eli uploaded most of the album, with every song complete. All of them except for the 7th track, Always There For You, which is only partially found as of now. Lavender Hill Mob. This was a music group, also sometimes referred to as LHM for short, from the 2000s, and while they're kind of obscure, you might recognize their song Endless Handbag, at least if you ever frequented the site Newgrounds, which used it for its theme song for a while. And a lot of their music is really hard to come by nowadays, besides an album called Flocking the Cat Toll, which has actually been found, although another full track called Smooth Sailing is missing, with only a demo being available, and who really knows what other tracks of theirs are also currently missing. The Watergate Tapes, 18.5 minutes. This entry actually just says Gateway Tapes 18.5, but I'm pretty sure this is actually referring to something I've already gone into in the Lost Media Tied to Conspiracies video. That being the infamous Watergate tapes, which for some reason are missing about 18.5 minutes of audio. But to summarize it, basically there was a huge scandal with the President of the United States at the time, Richard Nixon, in the 70s that resulted in his resignation. This was because it was found out through an extensive investigation that Nixon had attempted to cover up a break-in and burglary of the Watergate complex. And many of his conversations were actually recorded on tapes, which became the main evidence of his participation in the cover-up. And from one of these recordings, about 18.5 minutes are mysteriously missing, leading to many conspiracy theories on what could have been in those conversations and why they were even lost or deleted in the first place. And it's been claimed that his secretary at the time, Rosemary Woods, deleted them on accident, but not everyone is convinced that that's the full story or even the true one. But I guess that's up to you to decide. Either way, it seems this audio is probably lost for good, so we can only really speculate as to its true contents. I Stole $16 Million script. Everyone who is even remotely familiar with film, I'm sure knows the famous director Stanley Kubrick. Kubrick? Still not sure, but I'm definitely a big fan of his films. You know, he did The Shining, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Full Metal Jacket, Eyes Wide Shut, all classics. But he also did quite a few unreleased screenplays that were never actually made into films. One of these is called I Stole $16 Million, which was about a Baptist minister who actually became a safecracker, with Cary Grant planned at first to actually play the role. And honestly, it sounds like a cool story just off that brief synopsis. But obviously, it never happened, and the full script was never revealed. Gothic Maid. We've got another lost anime production here, and yet again a complete animation from not that long ago either, 2012, and it was actually even released limitedly in Japanese theaters in November. Yet still, footage is hard to come by, and the film is only partially found. It's about 70 minutes long and was created with 4K resolution in mind, as well as Dolby Atmos surround sound, and it was created across 3 different animation studios. However, the reason it hasn't seen the light of day since its initial showing is because the director believed that it could only be truly experienced in a theater setting, meaning he was against home media releases of any kind, which never actually did happen as far as we know. So all that really came out was the soundtrack and a couple of art books. Although maybe the director will reconsider sometime down the line, and possibly we'll get some sort of additional screenings or maybe even a full-on home media release. Crazy Shootin' Lost Videos. The Click is a pretty famous YouTuber who's been making videos since 2009 and has garnered over 1 million subscribers, but his channel at first was known as Crazy Shootin', where his first videos were actually Let's Plays and commentaries on games such as Call of Duty, Minecraft, and Amnesia, pretty standard for the time. Although nowadays he's mostly known for videos on various subreddits, and I guess some of those videos from his early days, the gaming ones, most likely are lost. But I did look through it, and a lot of them are still up on his channel as far as I could tell, but this guy's uploaded a ton of videos, so who really knows. Skydiving. A pretty broad topic or title for a Lost Media entry, so kind of taking a guess here, but there is a Lost Media archive article about a Roblox machinima called Skydiving, so that's what we're gonna go with. Apparently it might have been some sort of April Fool's joke created by a user called LegitC, and other than the fact that it was disliked by some viewers, not too much is known. Although it is thought that it was deleted sometime in 2018, and there are some screenshots from the video. The Black Fist Part 5 Reloaded. More YouTube lost media. So this was a series created by user Compant starting in 2016, but it's mainly known for Pirate Cynical actually making a video about the series, criticizing and joking about it. However, the 5th episode of the series, released in 2018, is lost media, as even by its standards, this episode was very poorly received due to its humor related to 9/11, as well as just general poor quality, and it's still lost in its original form. But like a lot of other instances with YouTube videos like this, it's only available through other YouTubers' reactions, although there is a restored version of the video that attempted to recreate it, which was made in 2021 by this user. Ben 10 Turkish Games. This is really interesting. Apparently Ben 10 became a really popular show in Turkey in the 2000s when Cartoon Network actually launched there. And so to promote the series even further, some games were being developed by a company called Project Khalid, or Khalid. And yeah, apparently they were actually official, as they were made in collaboration with Cartoon Network. However, for a long time, all the games were obscure and of course lost. In 2017 though, a set of 4 games were located and are now available for download. And they're definitely interesting. However, there are at least 3 others that are still missing to this day. One called Ben 10 Meteor Attack, an augmented reality game which sounds pretty ambitious for the time, as it likely required a webcam and cards or something. Then there was some sort of KFC game, but not much is known about that one. And lastly, there's Ben 10 Big Clash Istanbul, which I know I keep saying this, but it actually sounds just so fascinating, as Ben 10 apparently finds himself in Istanbul defending it from aliens. But other than that, we don't know much else about these lost titles. Coin Blasters. I promise you this isn't a meme even though it looks like one. This is actually a real gambling game from the 2010s, available for iOS and Android. Although it's very obscure because it wasn't up for that long, as it did get taken down due to investigations into fraud. Whoops. So basically all we have are just these images. Slinieko. I'm sorry, I don't know if that's actually how you say it, but this was a children's puppet TV series that aired for something like a couple hundred episodes, and we actually don't know how many for sure, but yeah, it was pretty infamous in Slovakia in the 80s when it was aired. And of course, it still is today because, yeah, these character designs are quite something. But it also featured Sunny, who was the character that the show was named after. This one really isn't that bad compared to the other main one. Basically, in the show though, Sunny would bring up some sort of topic which would be further represented through other segments, including some scenes with kids and some other disturbing puppet stuff. In fact, Blame It on Jorge made a video about this show and goes way more in depth into it if you're interested, but only some of the episodes of the show are available, and we don't even know the true episode count like I said, so we are definitely a very long way from finding this whole series. Silly Songs with Larry musical e-card. Prepare for a very obscure piece of lost media here, but if you're at all a fan of VeggieTales, I guess maybe this will interest you. Anyway, it's an e-card, but what does that even mean? I don't know, is this like the earliest NFT ever? I guess VeggieTales was just ahead of the curve. But yeah, in 2001 they released this online musical card which had the character Larry singing. But these images of it are the only actual thing we have. We don't have any actual video, so rip. Rite of the Spring choreography manuscripts. So this is a pretty famous ballet known for not only its complexity, but also for rioting and arrests that ensued during it back in 1913. However, the lost media comes in with the exact choreography manuscripts, which were made by Václav Nijinsky, because although the sheet music itself survives, the original manuscript has not surfaced. Although there are various reconstructions, some of which are thought to be pretty faithful and accurate. Greek Gospel of the Egyptians. Although no manuscripts for this gospel have been discovered, it's likely to have been written between 120 and 150 AD, and is known about because it's mentioned a few times in other works, and about 8 passages are available. And it's thought to tackle some sexual themes, as well as death and birth. And the only known passages come from the book Stromata, written by Clement of Alexandria. And as far as the rest of it, well, it's likely gone for good by now, in all honesty. Syriac Coca-Cola commercials. So Syriac is a pretty well-known animator and YouTuber known for his trippy but cool animations, most of which he features on his website. Although a post on his subreddit claims that there was a Coca-Cola commercial he worked on that's now lost. The post reads, quote, "Hey, does anyone have a link/copy of the old Coca-Cola commercial he had on his website maybe 10 years ago? It wasn't CGI, he probably just did video editing on it. It was a video that featured a few hundred lookalikes, which, how to explain this, emerged from behind other people and moved for a second, and then another one would emerge from behind them again. It's not on his official website or YouTube anymore. I believe it was here in Wayback Machine. But the Flash video isn't cached. And a user comments below that it is still hosted on the website, but this was 5 years ago and I can't even find that one. And the user also goes on to say that this isn't actually the video that he's looking for. ElsaGate deleted videos. So if you don't know what ElsaGate is, then I guess you're one of the lucky ones. This was and still is a very strange trend on YouTube, which first kind of appeared or was talked about in 2016. They're just bizarre videos targeted towards kids that get absurd views due to just how weird and disturbing they can really be, typically involving the characters of Elsa and Spider-Man and other usually kid-friendly characters, and for a while thankfully it stopped due to people calling it out, but it seems recently it's picking up steam again, which is not good to say the least. I know if I have kids one day, I don't want them seeing this weird stuff, that's for sure. So YouTube, please stop this, and if there are deleted and lost videos, well, good, to be honest. The less there are of these, the better. Fat Cat. Another very obscure one that might not even exist, as this is an alleged Screamer video from 2011 that shows a fat cat as the title implies, before cutting to that classic Exorcist jump scare. Although the video, if it did exist, has since been taken down and is nowhere to actually be found. Lasagna Cat unfinished videos. This is a YouTube parody series of Garfield created by Jeffrey Max and Zachary Johnson, which had 2 seasons, split apart by many years, one back in January of 2008 and the second coming out in February of 2017. But a lot of the footage from season 2 was actually shot apparently not long after season 1, although there was a lot of post-production problems and only 12 of the 22 filmed episodes were ever released, leaving those remaining 10 episodes unfinished and lost for the most part, although there are a few clips and screenshots found that are most likely from these lost episodes. Ween 10th album. So there are a ton of lost and found demo tapes and songs from this experimental rock group, but apparently they also have a completely lost 10th album, because the band broke up in 2012 despite being formed in the mid-80s, and also their 9th and final release wasn't as well received, which could be why the 10th album was never finished or released. And in case you haven't heard of this group, they're actually known for 2 really famous songs. Ones I'm sure you've heard of from SpongeBob of all things, those being Loop-de-Loop and Ocean Man. RMXS. This is apparently a pretty obscure lost EP from 2011, and it can be seen on a lost and rare music list on the website Rate Your Music, where it reads, "This was the name of an anonymous Russian witch house producer who released 1 album and a small series of EPs onto Bandcamp sometime in 2011, although efforts have been made to retrieve all the musician's material. RMXS currently stands as one of 2 exceptions to successful recovery." Coin Locker Kid Damnonia. Again, we got some rare and lost music, also featured on Rate Your Music, but this one we know a little bit more about, and it's an EP released on May 21st, 2016 by Coin Locker Kid, and it's recognized as experimental hip-hop and neo-psychedelia. There's also 4 tracks listed, combined for a total of about 17 minutes. And someone actually also left a review from 2020 as well, which states, quote, "This little one-off EP by Coin Locker Kid about how we are basically all damned to wander into the unknown and transform into something new boasts some of his most dissonant and some of his most beautiful production up to this point. While Animesis is a clanky, metallic, and rough piece which segues perfectly into the chaotic and punkish, The bile, incantation, and microscope slow things down again and weave together some extremely pleasant melodies with some touches of acoustic guitar. There honestly isn't much more to say about it than this, but overall this is a very solid EP, even if you can tell that Coinlocker Kid didn't really treat this like a main entry into his discography. Butch Yelton and Unbound, Cookin' Country Gospel. More music. So this refers to a Christian country band from the 70s, one that is kind of known more so for their album covers, but a lot of their music today is lost, including Cooking Country Gospel, an LP released in 1976 that featured 11 songs. And a few of the tracks from the group have been found and uploaded to YouTube, but this album is still missing. Alice Guy Filmography. One of the earliest, most experimental, and influential filmmakers in France is Alice Guy, who pioneered a lot of techniques and storytelling elements. And she's also known for being one of the first female filmmakers ever, if not the very first. However, as we Lost Media enthusiasts have come to learn over the years, most of the films made in the silent film era, especially this early on, are not only just lost, but most likely gone forever, due to there being barely any preservation tactics back then. And it's the same thing here, even with a filmmaker of such significance. So only some of her films are known about, and a lot of them there isn't much info on, and some probably have even just been completely forgotten to time, unfortunately. Cyber 6. This is a partially lost animated 1998 adaptation of a comic book series of the same name, with the show officially releasing in the US in 2000, although it was heavily censored due to its relatively mature material, redubbing certain words, completely removing certain violent and suggestive scenes, making it kind of a mess. And the series was pulled only 3 months after it started airing, with the last 2 episodes never actually airing at all. And even still, that's not all that's lost, because episode 4 is also completely missing, and episodes 7 and 10 are incomplete as of now. The New Teen Titans Just Say No. So here we got a really interesting, partially lost drug PSA from the 80s, starring the New Teen Titans, with the whole thing being about a minute long and showing a basketball player being offered drugs, but then the Teen Titans show up and explain why drugs are bad and to just say no. However, only about 18 seconds of the original PSA has surfaced, and it's without audio. Mortal Kombat 11 Ash Williams DLC. The Mortal Kombat games have had some pretty crazy crossover DLC characters, like Jason from Friday the 13th, Rambo, and even Freddy Krueger, so Ash Williams from the Evil Dead series getting DLC wouldn't be that wild. But sadly it never actually came out despite some promotional art and material surfacing, and even code in the files pointed to this character eventually releasing, but he just never came out. And when asked about it, the actor that typically portrays the character, Bruce Campbell, said, quote, "The jury is still out because, look, the truth is very simple. Characters are kinda owned by companies, including Ash, so sometimes those companies aren't allowed to loan characters between franchises because other companies go, whoa, then you have to make a deal if you're gonna, it's like loaning out Humphrey Bogart to another studio, you know? The studio makes a deal. It gets weird sometimes. So it might not happen because of legal crap." Shin Megami Tensei 3 Version A. This is a tech demo for the game Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, one that was never officially released or really revealed at all, as it was only meant for testing purposes. Although some gameplay and cutscenes were shown in a documentary, but besides that, this thing is completely lost. Although apparently it is known through the Japanese script which was found that the story was actually different, as well as even the controls and the battle system. 1937 International Imperial Trophy Race. This year was actually the first ever televised motor race, taking place on October 9th, 1937. A competition between 2 racers, B. Bira and Raymond Mays, with Bira being the winner, and there are only some surviving photographs of the race, but no footage, as like many other of the early BBC programs, they were not preserved or recorded, only broadcast, meaning the footage is pretty much lost forever. Peanuts, October 2nd, 1955. The Peanuts is the longest running comic strip series of all time if I'm not mistaken, at least in the US, and it's such a well-known property. So there's quite a bit in terms of lost media. One of these is actually a strip from October 2nd, which features the character of Linus failing to kick a football. And while the strip is actually available now, it's not actually complete and is missing some panels from the original. So I guess the only way this could get found is if someone finds an almost 70-year-old newspaper from this exact date. The best of the worst. So this is interesting. Basically, this was an early version of the Ed's World comic, created by Ed Gold in 2004. However, the only ones that have been revealed are issues 1, 2, and 6. Seeing as they're an early prototype of another series, I guess it does make sense that not all of them have been found. Also, it is possible that they could be lost forever, as one of the hard drives containing the issues had a malfunction. Duke Nukem Forever Early Builds. Quite the infamous title here, known for having one of the longest development cycles, with it beginning in 1996 and not releasing until 2011, receiving some pretty bad critical and commercial ratings. So with the development this long, you know the game went through so many changes that there were basically multiple different games being made entirely, and 2 of these very early builds are lost, although one of them is shown in an E3 1998 trailer. And yeah, it's crazy that this is still the same game as the quote-unquote modern one. Now, I'm just sitting here thinking that like 2011 was actually kind of a long time ago, which is making me feel way too old. But anyway, yeah, the game obviously looks way different, and it's running on the old engine, of course. But here's a really weird thing that happened. In December of 2022, on Christmas actually, a very early version of the game was leaked online from 1996 that was actually for some reason a side-scroller. Yeah, and I'm sure this rabbit hole goes even deeper. Doritos Crash Course 2. Anyone remember Doritos Crash Course? For me, this is definitely nostalgia fuel right here. Some of these Xbox Live Arcade games were pretty sick, at least for back in the day. But I had no clue that there was actually a sequel, which released on the Xbox 360 Marketplace on May 8th, 2013. But because of its always online requirement, when the game shut down only like a year later in October of 2014, the game was pretty much done for. You couldn't really play it anymore. The only way to even access it was to have it downloaded back then, but it still doesn't really work. Fallout Quest. You thought Fallout Brotherhood of Steel or Van Buren were obscure titles in the Fallout series? Well, have you heard of Fallout Quest? No? Me neither. And New Vegas is one of my favorite games of all time, but I still had no clue what this was. Basically though, it's a demake of Fallout 3 using JRPG elements, and was created in 2011 and is entirely actually in Japanese. So because of this, and the fact that no copies can be found, we really don't know much about it at all. All we really have are some screenshots, where players can kind of put together what's happening based on previous knowledge of Fallout 3, such as with this screen cap, as if you played the original, you'll probably recognize this location as Megaton because of the nuke. And there's also an image of the map too, which looks like Pokemon or something. This whole thing is just really, really interesting. And as a Fallout fan, this definitely deserves a deep dive one day. Get your free TVs. Here's another game tech demo, this time created by Valve in 2000 as Half-Life 2's first real playable test level, used to highlight features of the game and engine, including of course the physics, which the game would become known for. And I guess the best description of it was given by writer Mark Laidlaw himself when asked about it, saying, quote, "The video as I recall was of the viewpoint character moving through some dingy buildings on a deserted street, when around the corner run 2 citizens carrying old-fashioned boxy television sets. The first one shouts, 'TVs, free TVs,' as he runs past. The second one says, a bit more of a fast mutter, 'Get one, get a TV, get yourself a TV.' I think as the viewpoint keeps going, you round a corner and see a citizen and a cop in a very awkward scuffle, where the cop tries to conk the citizen with his nightstick, and the citizen is trying to protect himself with his fists. Somewhere in here, maybe a different map, another citizen hurls a Molotov at a building and starts a small fire. I think there might be alarms going off the whole time. It was a pretty short clip, and I'm not even sure what it was supposed to demo. considering it was SIGGRAPH and not a gameplay demo. Imagination is the Only Escape. Imagination is the Only Escape is an unreleased and unfinished game that was in development for the Wii and DS and was actually meant to be a single-player educational game set in France and in World War II, meant to explore the Holocaust and Nazi Germany, so the game definitely got its fair share of controversy due to its dark subject matter, including Nintendo of America, who did not have plans to release the title. But it's likely the game was never completed because of the Indiegogo campaign in 2013 failing to reach its goal. VibRibbon Ripple mobile game. We've talked about VibRibbon on here before. It's basically a rhythm game with this rabbit guy, although it was only initially released for PlayStation and PSP in Japan and the EU. But there was a sequel made for the PS2 called VibRipple, which actually got a mobile port in 2004 and was made in Flash, but it's likely it had a very limited release on a website because there is barely any info on it, and of course it's unplayable. But there's also not really even any footage of it that I could find, just this one screenshot. Bernie and the Invisibles. Here we have another obscure music group from the 70s, Bernie and the Invisibles, a little known band that some consider to be ahead of their time in terms of the punk rock scene. However, only a few songs have been found over the years, including a live performance and on other CDs. Come As You Are, Masters. Come As You Are is one of the most well-known and famous songs from the rock band Nirvana, released in March of 1992, and it was the band's final American Top 40 hit, also getting to the number 32 spot on the Billboard Hot 100. But apparently, according to a Radio X UK article, it says that the original master tapes for the Nevermind album, yes, the whole album, not just this one song, may have been destroyed in a fire at Universal Music. Scrim Drug Flow 2. So now we got Drug Flow 2, which is a mixtape created by artist Scrim, who is known for being a part of a rap duo that I can't really say the name of without YouTube killing me, but anyway, this was released in June 2013 on mixtapewire.com and datpiff.com. But only got about 100 downloads before it was taken down. There were 25 songs, including 2 music videos on the tape, but as of now, only 3 of those songs have ever been found. Hellfest 2004 Soundboard Audio. Hellfest 2004 was the final one of a yearly festival that took place for 3 years in July in Elizabeth, New Jersey, featuring a bunch of death metal and heavy rock bands. However, a DVD was planned to be released from the 2004 festival, but it never actually came out, until in 2013 footage from the event was actually posted. But the soundboard recordings of the music are lost, and all that's available is the audio from the camera's recordings. Hollywood Undead Untitled Xmas EP. Hollywood Undead is an American hip-hop and rock group that was formed in 2005 and is still making music to this day. And one of the band members, nicknamed Johnny Three Tears, said in an interview that they would be dropping an EP featuring unreleased songs from their new album at the time, Day of the Dead, and that it would be releasing during or around the holidays, although that came and went with no EP coming out. And 3 of the songs were actually found by name in a database, those being Make Money Take Money, So Dead and Gone, and Lovesick Radio. But these songs, as well as any others that may exist from this EP, are still lost. Aha, Take On Me instrumental version. I'm sure everyone has heard the song Take On Me once in their life. I mean, it was a huge success for this Norwegian group in the 80s, and it saw international success. But there are many lost and older versions of the song, as they had been working on it since 1981, with it not releasing until 85. And one of the known lost demos was recorded in 1983, but not much else is known, except for a short snippet which was featured in a documentary from 2005. 9 Inch Nails The Fragile Deviations 1. This is an alternate version of the album The Fragile, released by the band 9 Inch Nails, with this version having a very limited release in 2017, including different takes, instrumentals, and even previously unreleased tracks. It was available in physical form as well as digitally for a very limited run. However, I'm not sure if any of the tracks are missing, but I would assume they're out there given the official release of this album. But this could just be also referring to the fact that this album did give a release to many unreleased and I guess technically lost songs. The Velvet Underground 4th album. The Velvet Underground is an American rock band formed in 1964 that made a total of 5 studio albums, but there was also a 4th unreleased album from MGM that may or may not have had a working title, but most just call it the Lost Album or the 4th MGM album, with it being recorded in 1969 with 14 tracks. As to why it was never released, well, that's still up for debate. It could have just been rejected altogether, or some have theorized that they were just simply demo tapes. Natural Snow Buildings Witch Season. This psychedelic folk music duo, definitely didn't know that was a genre, but good to know, has been active since 1998. And one of their lost albums also featured on the Rare and Lost music list is Witch Season, which is very obscure and may have not even ever been released officially. Chowder 2009. Talked about this before, but this is a cancelled film from the Chowder Cartoon Network series that was being made in 2009. It was actually more like a 1-hour TV special, but yeah. The storyboards for the film were actually completed, and the story has been described by the series creator C.H. Greenblatt as, quote, "The basic story is about Chowder finding an enchanted map that leads to Pie Island, and more importantly to Gravy Jones' lost treasure, the ultimate gravy recipe. Panini and Endive have the other half of the map, and of course only true love can unite the two halves of the map to show the location of the treasure. There was even a big kiss between the two kids in the action-packed finale." And also, it is notable for a character named McConaughey, who would have been the villain of the special, who was obviously directly inspired by actor Matthew McConaughey. Help Deleted Scenes. So Help is actually a comedy musical film about the Beatles from 1965, which has quite a few missing deleted scenes, as most movies do. One of these is a bizarre scene in which Ringo milks a cow in a closet for some milk and then just leaves. Another was of an alligator actually biting off Ringo's hand. I don't know what this man was doing in this film, but yeah. And then there was another one of the group going on a skiing trip and arriving at the Austrian Alps, and then there's a couple more including like a car chase scene, but most of these have yet to been found. Although there are some stills that do prove their existence. Chris Chan versus the internet. I'm sure most people familiar with early internet culture know about this infamous figure, Chris Chan. Even just pretty recently, there's still crazy stuff going on, right? But this entry is actually referring to a documentary film project focused on tackling Chris Chan's life and the impact of their life being shared online. And it was also going to feature one of Chris Chan's ex-friends, Megan Schroeder, giving her a perspective on the whole situation. It was announced on Kickstarter and asked for a $20,000 budget, which most thought was quite high, especially since filming was already complete and that it would be used for just post-production. But due to stress associated with the project, the filmmaker allegedly actually destroyed the only copy of the film on a hard drive and actually provided this photo as proof. Although he could very well still have it, but for now, all we really have are a few minutes that were leaked in 2020, as well as the Kickstarter trailer. Cooking Class Cannibal. And here we get into the rabbit hole of gacha life, at least for a little bit, with this lost horror video. Although not much about the video itself is really known, and we can only really guess as to what it contains, but a fandom article does give a brief summary, and yeah, it involves essentially what you can picture. Don't want to get too deep into it or we're gonna get demonetized, but point is, we do have the thumbnail, so there's that, and the video was also posted in 2019, getting about 500,000 views in over a year, which is pretty good performance. But it was actually taken down for violating YouTube's policies, and it hasn't really been seen since. Spider-Man vs. Kraven. Pretty sure I've also discussed this before, but this is actually a Spider-Man fan film from 1974 about the villain Kraven the Hunter, which was produced by students of New York University and adapted from issue 15 of the Amazing Spider-Man comic. However, it is a fan film and obviously not officially licensed, so it couldn't really get a wide release, and so the film has only ever been screened a few times, including a final time in 2005 at a convention in LA. And it hasn't been seen since, and it's believed the only copy was lost upon the destruction of the director's computer, which had the only known copy. Aqua's third album. This is a pop group most known for their song from 1997, Barbie Girl, that was formed in that same year but actually broke up in 2001 before their third album could be finished and released, despite there being quite a bit of work done on it, including presumably finished songs which were actually vaulted, although they did get back together and release a third album later on, but that is likely completely different material. Evanescence Lost Songs. So again, we got kind of another general topic of lost songs from a music group, and Evanescence is a rock band that was formed in the mid-90s and is known for their songs Bring Me to Life and My Immortal. In regards to specific pieces of lost music, there are quite a few unreleased songs that are featured in a list made of their unreleased discography on Genius.com. Biffa 2001 videos. Biffa 2001, also now known as Biffa Plays Indie Games, is a YouTuber that has quite a few deleted videos, specifically from his Minecraft Hermitcraft SMP series, which were all actually privated on March 14th, 2001. A lot of the episodes, however, are archived, but a few are definitely still missing. Dies Irae. The final album released by the Italian-Slovenian rock band Devil Doll is Dies Irae, which had quite a strange recording history, as apparently they had originally recorded about 700 minutes of music, despite only about 50 minutes making it to the album's final release, which is because of a few things, but the main one was an explosion that actually took place at the studio, destroying almost everything they had, leading them to having to re-record everything from scratch. Bakugan live action. In 2010, it was announced that there was a live-action film being produced by Universal Pictures of Bakugan, based on the Japanese toy and anime series, because everything has to be ruined by Hollywood, right? But all we really got as far as info was that Harold Zwart was coming over to be the project's director, known for doing things like the Karate Kid remake as well as The 12th Man. However, there have been no updates since, and it's likely the film has been cancelled, leaving almost all production materials lost, except for a few pieces of concept art, which were revealed on one of the artist's website for a short time. American History X deleted scenes. American History X, starring Edward Norton, is a crime drama film from 1998 that received widespread acclaim from both audiences and critics alike, despite its dark and realistic subject matter. However, there is a mysterious lost director's cut of the film, said to be about 96 minutes in total, despite the final runtime being about 2 hours, which is interesting, right? Normally you hear about director's cuts being much longer, but this time it's kind of the opposite situation. This being due to some drama with the post-production, which ended up with director Tony Kaye being completely removed from the actual process. But the story gets even crazier because apparently Edward Norton stole one of the copies of the film at some point and was also even hard to work with during the editing process, making his own cut of the film, and even allegedly going as far as to destroy many of the lost deleted scenes entirely, which of course Kaye did not approve of, and only a bit of footage from a work print has been found. Agent 00. So this is a kind of obscure and lost Filipino spy and comedy film from 1981, and yet apparently the film had some success despite it not being available today, because its sequel ended up being one of the highest grossing Filipino films ever released outside of the country. Amanita Pestilence. Here we have another lost film, this one actually being a Canadian horror film from 1963, about a character who ends up becoming obsessed with this weird, basically supernatural fungus for some reason that ends up basically destroying his hometown. It is also a notable production for being the first known Canadian color film, as well as the first to be shot in 2 different languages, all with the same cast members, which is pretty interesting. Although it's obscure and lost today because it never had any home media release due to it receiving poor ratings, and its last known appearance, aside from other additional screenings, was on the Movie Pix channel in May of 1998, and it seemingly hasn't really been seen since, as far as we know. A Hat in Time Early Builds. A Hat in Time is a fairly recent and beloved platformer from 2017 that's had a pretty long and storied development over the years, starting in August of 2012, leading to many changes, different versions, and builds, the usual stuff. And thankfully the Lost Media Wiki has a huge list of all the various different builds that were shown off in videos and whatnot, as well as the seemingly lost early versions of the game if you're interested. Applebee's CDI training game. Bruh, no way, another one? Okay, I have to make a whole video about this rabbit hole, but for this one I couldn't really find anything. When you look it up it just kind of links back to this Iceberg, although LSSQ does reference it in a video of his called Pieces of Lost Media That Are So Bad They're Good. But he's mainly just talking about the fact that it was commonplace for companies to use these kinds of CDI ROMs for training purposes, and in the video someone actually leaves a comment stating that Applebee's did actually have one of these, although there is not really any info on it, so make of that what you will. Assassin's Creed Lost Legacy. Here we have a cancelled entry in the Assassin's Creed series. More like a cancelled game rather than just a traditional piece of lost media. I don't usually make that distinction and I just group them together most of the time, but yeah. Anyways, this game was meant to have previous protagonist and fan favorite character Ezio traveling east and visiting Constantinople, having a similar plot to what would become Assassin's Creed Revelations. But besides that, we don't know much else about this entry. Cat Roots. Here we have another cancelled and unreleased title, but this time we got a little bit more going on because there was actually a very active development and even a tech demo which was shown off at E3 2000. But despite the tech demo trailer being revealed, we still don't know that much about the game in terms of gameplay, story, or anything like that. Just that it was being developed by Marigold Management in 2000 for the N64, before being cancelled shortly after due to Nintendo's next console, the GameCube, releasing in 2001. Fire Emblem Maiden of Darkness. The game Fire Emblem The Binding Blade was released for the Game Boy Advance in March of 2002 in Japan, which started off first in development as a different title entirely called Maiden of Darkness, but it was also called Fire Emblem for Nintendo 64 DD. Yep, it was a disk drive game originally, but the project was cancelled on September 24th of 2000, shifting focus to The Binding Blade as the next release, with many changes having to be made due to how complex the project had actually gotten. No builds, however, of the original N64 version have ever been found, and all there really is are some pieces of concept art and one screenshot from the actual game. Jimmy Neutron Got a Blast Rocket Race. This here is an online web game released in 2002 for the cartoon series Jimmy Neutron that featured an interesting gimmick, which players had to collect various codes to unlock parts that could be used to build rockets and race them against other characters, with these codes being unlocked or acquired through purchases for the most part, such as with certain cereals. But the game was eventually removed from Nick.com in February of 2017, and since hasn't really been playable, much like a lot of other online games in the past. Spore 2009. Spore is a pretty popular real-time simulation game released in 2008 for PC and Mac, with a 2D Flash game being made only a year later, which was actually made to promote the Wii game Spore Hero. And it basically involved the same basic premise as the other Spore titles, basically creating a creature and, letting it do stuff, unlocking other things in the process. But the game actually became unplayable and lost in 2012. Although some of the files have been recovered, but it's still missing many, so it remains in a non-playable state. So all there really is are some gameplay videos and screenshots for now. A Clockwork Orange deleted scenes. A Clockwork Orange is a film that I'm sure many are familiar with, especially if you know or are fans of the works of Stanley Kubrick, talked about him earlier. Yet for a film that's already over 2 hours long, you might be surprised to hear that there was actually quite a bit of deleted and lost scenes. And well, let's just say more than a few, because it was revealed in a report on the film's production that by the time filming wrapped, there was a total of about 452,960 feet of film used, aka about 85 miles, which is just a completely mind-boggling number. And when roughly converted over into hours of time, it gives us about 75 hours of footage, which once again is an insane number. But of course you have to remember they definitely had bloopers, multiple takes, that kind of thing. But still, with this much extra footage, it's very likely that there were some completely new scenes that ended up being cut from the final film, possibly for good if the 35mm prints weren't properly stored, or even if they kept any of these scenes for archival purposes to begin with. Angry Grandpa lost videos. Angry Grandpa was a pretty famous YouTuber from way back in the day, when raging on camera and having outbursts was kind of the big thing. But still, he was pretty beloved by fans for his personality. However, with most YouTubers, there's bound to be some lost and deleted content, and here it's really no different. Although being a larger channel, some of them have been re-uploaded and archived, although some are a little harder to come by. By and large website. So this is actually a now defunct website created by Pixar as promotional material in 2007, as it is of the fictional company featured in the famous film WALL-E. At the time, it was considered one of the biggest viral marketing websites, where it featured info about the movie as well as a shop for merch, but the website as of now only links back to Disney's movie website. Curious Canimals, what is it? This was the original version of the series Canimals We Can Do It, which was a South Korean and British live-action / CGI hybrid show that ran for a total of 109 episodes over the course of 2 seasons starting in 2011. This first version is slightly different from the later one though, and as of now is only partially found, as quite a few episodes are actually missing, but some re-uploads can actually be found on YouTube. Jack Massey Welsh lost videos. Jack Massey Welsh is a British YouTuber with quite a bit of content, but also a lot of subscribers spread across quite a few different channels. So for someone making content as long as he has, I mean, you know the drill by now, bound to be deleted content, but yeah, there was a Reddit post on the Jack Sucks at Life subreddit where it described and discussed some of these deleted videos. Spill.com. This is a discontinued and closed website that lasted from 2006 until its closure in December of 2013. It was mostly made up of movie and game reviews, as well as other topics of discussion such as news, and was actually also a part of a different project. More so like a continuation of something called The Real Deal, which was a public access cable TV series located in Austin, Texas, where the website was able to gather most of its fans and users from, but most of the material is lost due to its closure. Venom Fang X videos. Okay, I'm sorry there's so much YouTuber lost media, so I'll try to be brief with these, but this was another YouTube vlogger apparently known for talking about religion and politics back in the day, but has since deleted his channel as far as I could tell, but definitely went through his fair share of drama, with a few re-uploaded videos of him related to that from many years ago, including which was a dispute with another YouTuber called Thunderfoot. But yeah, I don't know too much about this guy or his content really, although there are quite a few infamous referenced videos that are lost, one of which involved him apparently dressing up as the Joker. The Epic of Gilgamesh. This is an epic poem written sometime between 2100 and 1200 BC, approximately in Mesopotamia, originally on clay tablets, but of course with a piece of ancient history this old, the whole thing was not recovered, and in fact only a few tablets were able to be recovered from the earliest version that was found, although there are plenty of other copies that have been discovered, but some of which do actually vary, but at least give us an idea of the general story. There's also many different fragments, and it's also sometimes difficult for historians to figure out which are part of this epic and which may just be early yet distinct poems. Either way, a very important piece of literature in the history of the world. Hemingway's Stolen Suitcase. Now, Ernest Hemingway is a very famous American storyteller, novelist, and journalist. He's also known for having quite a lot of famous quotes, as well as creating the Iceberg theory. Anyway, this refers to a time in 1922 when his wife accidentally lost his briefcase full of his writings, which were never seen again. To be fair though, it was actually stolen, and who knows if the thief even knew what they had on their hands. Mystery Disc: Many Roads to Murder. Released in 1983 is this little-known interactive laserdisc. Yes, that's a real thing apparently. Not only that though, this was actually a sequel to another murder mystery laserdisc title called Murder Anyone? The game was only released in Japan though, and is very obscure, surprise surprise. So there's not too much else on this except for a few screenshots and only about 20 seconds of video. Virtual Pro Yakyu 96. Again, another planned Japanese-only release, and a very obscure one at that, which there isn't really any solid info on. Basically though, it was a basketball game planned for March of 1996, but was actually cancelled before it could be finished and actually come out. Mike Henry's Batman Photographs. Here we have some lost photos in regards to a series that never actually came into fruition, but was in discussions and had active promotion and planning, with American actor Mike Henry picked to play the character, even having him dress up as Batman as a form of advertising the show, done through a set of publicity stills. Obviously, this didn't go anywhere, as DC got the TV rights and worked with ABC to produce the iconic show from 1966, but these photos of Mike Henry as Batman are still lost media, as we only have some artist mock-ups based on accounts of what he looked like in the costume. Super Monkey Ball 2 promotional wallpapers. Kind of weird and oddly specific piece of lost media here, but I mean, if you're a fan of Super Monkey Ball 2, I mean, hey, it's something. But yeah, on the Japanese official website, there were 14 wallpapers that were uploaded there before eventually being taken down. 4 of them being completely lost as of now, and 2 only being partially available. Think desktop screen mates. Remember Bonzi Buddy? Well, this is something kind of similar here. Well, not really, but basic concept is there, I guess. Anyway, this was a series of desktop brand applications made of various characters from pop culture that would appear on your desktop and help you do stuff, I guess. And they were mostly available on the Think Desktop website for a while, but a lot of them did not end up being archived, making a lot of them lost, with only SpongeBob, Ice Age, and a few others being archived. The Sad Story of Henry broadcast. This was a BBC adaptation from 1953 of a book from the Railway series, which is most popular in the form of the TV series Thomas the Tank Engine, but The Sad Story of Henry was renamed to The Three Railway Engines to, I guess, make it easier to understand for new viewers, and was about an engine named Henry who was bricked up. Oh, wait. Yo. Anyways, yeah, not gonna lie, I don't really know anything about Thomas or railway stuff, but essentially it's about Henry hiding from the rain in a tunnel. But apparently the broadcast didn't go over so well due to some issues with it, including changes to the story and some clunky animation. But again, you know what happened by now with all these early BBC broadcasts. Most of them were not archived and are likely gone for good, unless someone out there happened to have recorded it. Mac Paint 3D. So during the era of Apple after Steve Jobs had left there, or was fired rather, there were a lot of changes in the company. Lots of pulling in different directions creatively in terms of their projects, and many prototypes were made during this period which never actually made it to market. One of these projects was Mac Paint 3D and an Apple drawing tablet that was made decades before the iPad, but mainly it looks like it was just for touchscreen drawing purposes in conjunction with this new software called Mac Paint 3D, which was an updated version of Mac Paint that featured touchscreen technology. Although this project ended up being cancelled by Steve Jobs shortly after he returned to Apple. Professor Layton Mobile R for FOMA 903i/703i. This is an oddly specific one, but basically it's a mobile release of Professor Layton in 2012 for a very specific set of phones, the FOMA 903i and 703i, whatever these things are. It also apparently included some other exclusive stuff through like art as well as music and even multiple different games, all of which are now currently lost due to the service being shut down on October 28th, 2014. 10 Things I Hate About Life. Planned for a release in 2014, this comedy spin-off of the film from 1999, 10 Things I Hate About You, started production in 2012, although it of course never released, or it wouldn't be on this list, now would it? But the script is actually found thanks to Yoshi Killer. Those who have long since followed the channel have probably heard him come up a few times before, but yeah. Anyways, the film did actually have at least 30 minutes of footage that was completed, as it was briefly screened in 2013. Although this footage as of now is still lost. 2001: A Space Odyssey deleted scenes. More Kubrick deleted scenes, definitely becoming a trend here. And one of the biggest and most recognized projects is the space epic science fiction 2001: A Space Odyssey. However, with this one we know quite a bit more about what's going on, as it was not long before the film would actually premiere that Kubrick made some last minute cuts to the actual film, removing about 17 minutes altogether, which is kinda intense, I gotta say, although it is already a long movie on its own. And it was also reported that this cut footage was for some reason found in a salt mine vault in Kansas of all places. But even if it was actually found, the footage has not surfaced as of now. Brother Martin, Servant of Jesus. This was a film released in 1942 that was a religious film starring an all-black cast about an uncle who describes the story of a Peruvian man and his rise to becoming a saint. The only known footage available from this film is a trailer, but no prints of the actual movie itself have been located, at least as far as we can tell. Chicken Little 1943. Not gonna lie, I had no idea there was a Chicken Little animated short from 1943. I always just thought of that weird 2005 movie from my childhood. I guess my Gen Z is showing, but anyway, this refers to a lost original cut of that Disney short from 43, which some believe exists or existed at some point. Although there really isn't too much evidence of its actual existence, although it's mostly claimed that there were many line differences, this being because, get ready for this short was actually apparently commissioned by the US government as a propaganda short. Crazy. But the final cut is toned down compared to quite a few of the alleged lines from the original draft, including references to Mein Kampf, aka Hitler's Manifesto. Cube alternate ending. In 1997, this cult horror classic was released to some mixed reception, but overall most people loved the unique setting, as it featured a small cast of characters that wake up in a room which leads to many identical rooms which all form a cube, hence the title, with them trying to find a way to escape. And there are additional films in the series, but none as loved as the first one, which actually had an alternate ending filmed, which has never been proven with actual footage, but it's claimed by some that it was featured in a theatrical version where it shows a survivor escaping the cube and being on some sort of purple alien planet, surrounded by a seemingly endless ocean. However, it's been said that the film's director removed the scene and had all copies of it destroyed, so as not to ruin the mystery of the cube's origin, as well as not directly reveal what's actually outside of it. So it's unlikely that this scene will ever resurface, sadly. Child Rebel Soldier. So this entry is a little confusing, as I'm not too sure where the lost media comes in here, unless it's just concerned with unreleased or lost music from this group, or if it's just referring to the fact that the group was cancelled in 2013. But anyway, it was a hip-hop supergroup formed in 2007, consisting of Kanye West, Pharrell Williams, and Lupe Fiasco. But in terms of singles, there are only 2 listed on their discography, making me definitely think they had some vaulted music. Cricket and Clover demos. Here we have an unreleased album yet again, that being the Cabin album as it's sometimes known as, by the rock band Panic at the Disco. This album is thought to have been pretty different from their usual style though, getting more into a punk sound and being more story-based, with every song touching on the same overall narrative. But the album ended up getting scrapped because it was just too different from their other material, and only one song has ever been fully found, that being Nearly Witches. And there are other snippets of a song called It's True Love, but that's about it. Toho Lost Songs. Talked about the Toho project a bit here, but I'll be brief with this one because again, it's really general, and I don't know much at all about this, but yeah, quick refresher, it's become a multimedia anime-inspired franchise that started from bullet hell games. So I guess there are also some lost and missing songs, which I did see getting brought up on the Toho subreddit in regards to lost media, but nothing too specific there. One Peluchinga. Okay, so EquaRep, the creator of the Iceberg, had to explain this to me, so big ups to him, but essentially this is some kind of web page that is kind of a spin-off or copy from another social networking page from Argentina called Taringa, where there were way less rules, basically making it like the Wild West essentially of the internet where you could post or say anything. But after a rule was instated against material on the site, the page was taken down, leaving most of everything that was there lost. Palmistry commercial. We've got some more rather obscure lost media from South America. So this time it's some sort of ad or commercial which aired on a channel in Peru called Pan America Television in the 90s. It focused on a hand, according to those who saw it, with palmistry marks, which if you don't know are basically used as divination about someone's future, health markers, and their psychological profile even. But next to the hand was also a spinning mannequin head with a black background, while some creepy music played for the duration. Sounds like a bit of a creepypasta, but these weird creepy commercials have been known to happen. However, there really is no solid proof of its existence right now. The Simpsons Movie Original Cut. The Simpsons movie, released in 2007, is one that went through a lot of changes and revisions in production despite it being an animated feature. Some of these changes are known, but a lot of the deleted or changed sequences are just gone, although there are almost 5 minutes of cut content on the DVD release. Also, shout out to Seeker of the Lost once again, he did a whole video on this topic if you want to learn more. But basically there are also possibly changed lines that are referenced in Burger King tie-in toys of all things, as well as other small changes that are known, such as with Lisa having a different love interest, that being Milhouse in a different version of the movie, as well as God speaking to Marge. Only One. This here is pretty wild. I mean, by Kanye's standards, not really, but anyway, it's definitely interesting. Essentially, Kanye West wanted to make a game with Nintendo in which he would provide the soundtrack, which he apparently pitched directly to Shigeru Miyamoto. Zachary Ryan goes on to describe this encounter on Twitter, saying, quote, "He went on to say that Kanye showed him the prototype for a video game. In it, you played as Kanye's late mother flying to heaven, set to a soundtrack conducted by Kanye himself. He was shaking his head as he described it, not like he thought it was a bad game, but more so in the way that he just sorta couldn't believe that Kanye West was pitching him a video game. He described incredulously and in great detail what the game looked like and how it played. I was laughing because I sorta couldn't believe it either. At the end of the story, he nodded and said, 'It was very interesting.' There was a long pause and he added, 'It was very moving.' Then he laughed really hard and said, 'Kanye West wanted to make a game with Nintendo,' and then in English, 'Wow,' and gave me 2 thumbs up. And just 2 weeks later, the project was announced in a trailer at a Yeezy event. However, even though production did begin, it seems the project has since been shelved, as that was way back in 2016. Lex novelization. Lex, also called Lex the Dark Zone Stories or Tales from a Parallel Universe, was a sci-fi TV series that ran for 4 seasons and 61 episodes from 1997 to 2002, and was expected to receive a novel adaptation or continuation of the story written by the show's creator Paul Donovan. However, it's unknown if any work was actually completed on the novel because it was never released, and no manuscript pages have ever been seen. The only thing available was a temporary cover for the book, which could be found on Amazon. The Simpsons scripts. Back at it again with The Simpsons. I'm sure I don't need to explain it or give a history lesson here. Let's just say with a show going since 1989, obviously stuff gets cut, things change, and episodes go unfinished or unproduced entirely. which is the case with a few known episodes, such as the Prince one, which had some issues regarding the script leading to it being scrapped, with only some of the script being shown after his passing in 2016. There was also an earlier planned episode about Bart going to military school made before The Secret War of Lisa Simpson, as well as an unfinished crossover with the show 30-something. Joseph Haydn sheet music. Franz Joseph Haydn is an Austrian composer and musician that lived from 1732 to 1809, and is known for being a friend and mentor to Mozart and Beethoven, as well as being a brother of another famous composer, Michael Haydn. So yeah, if some of Beethoven's music is lost, it's no shocker here that the work of Haydn would also be lost given how long ago it was made. Amelia Lilly Be a Fighter. Finally, we've got another piece of found media, located in February of 2022 by user Goodsong. The album was originally lost because it was delayed after a scheduled release in 2013, but it was later rescheduled for an early 2024 release, but was quickly taken down from online retailers. However, of course, a fan did manage to compile all the songs into a YouTube playlist, and then eventually they were put into a Google Drive link where they are now available for download. Milli Vanilli Back in an Attack. This was a planned but later cancelled album from the music duo Milli Vanilli that was scrapped after the death of member Rob Pilatus. After facing some drama from lip-syncing their performances due to their poor English speaking, they got back together in 1997 for this new album. Although during a promotional tour for the album, Pilatus was found dead of an OD, leading the album to never actually be released. Jacques Charles aerial photographs. Jacques Charles was a French inventor known for making the first hydrogen-based gas balloon, which he did in 1783, which was a massive event with a purported 400,000 spectators, including one of which was Benjamin Franklin. However, I'm not sure where aerial photographs would come from, considering most of his ballooning activities, at least the ones he's known for, happened in the late 18th century and early 19th century. And there are no surviving photographs from before 1826 as far as we know, so I'm kind of unsure here. Maybe this could be referring to something else, but yeah. Jake the Snake Roberts DDTs with Hulk Hogan. This refers to a cancelled storyline in the WWE from 2005, where during an interview segment, the wrestler Jake the Snake Roberts reveals he did a scene where he used his finishing move called the DDT to hype the feud with Hulk Hogan, but instead of the crowd actually rooting for Hogan as intended, they were actually rooting for the heel, or the villain in this case, being Roberts, leading to the storyline actually being completely changed. And a couple of segments from the Snake Pit have surfaced, but definitely not everything. 1977 Hey Loser. Here we got another obscure one posted on the Lost Media subreddit, where a user discusses a phone number that had posters advertising it asking you to call them, which the OP claimed was actually a pretty funny service, with this image being taken on his phone from 2006 in New York as the only proof of its existence. Another user chimed in though, saying they looked through the archives of the site and that it wasn't really updated post 2006. And they also found similar posters from around the area, but the actual phone number is no longer registered. Age 35 II deleted videos. So this is another YouTuber, apparently a Japanese retired toy reviewer, who posted their first video in 2007, but quit uploading in November of 2011, so quite a while ago already. I guess no surprise here that some of those videos are lost to time. The Sporting Gang. Airing in the mid-2000s on Channel 7 in Thailand, this CGI animated show called The Sporting Gang only had about 24 episodes total, but not much else is really known about the show, as it's quite obscure. But there are in fact uploads on YouTube of the show's intro, which give at least a little insight into this long-lost series. The Simpsons on Cartoon Network broadcast. The Simpsons did actually have a brief run, believe it or not, on Cartoon Network, as proved by a bumper from 2006, although this was on the Cartoon Network Philippines channel, but still. It was also apparently heavily censored as well, but the actual broadcast itself has yet to be located. Red Hot Riding Hood original ending. This refers to the Red Hot Riding Hood short from 1943, which is a darker adaptation of the Little Red Riding Hood story that everyone knows. What's hilarious here is that the original planned ending is probably less controversial than the actual one, at least by modern standards, which has the big bad wolf shooting himself and committing while the other ending would have had the wolf marry the grandma and have some sort of wolf kid together, which is definitely still very weird, but it's interesting they chose that over, well, you know what. And that uncut ending remains lost to this day. The Way of All Flesh. The Way of All Flesh is a now lost silent film from 1927, directed by Victor Fleming. The film also starred Emil Jannings, who was awarded the first ever Best Actor Academy Award for this film, as well as another called The Last Command. Still, it's interesting to know that a film tied to such a prestigious award is lost. As of now, only a few short clips survive. Bohemian Rhapsody Deleted Scenes. Bohemian Rhapsody from 2018 is a biographical musical about the life of Freddie Mercury, lead singer of the famous rock band Queen. Some of the known scenes cut from the film include the full Live Aid set, more backstory into Freddie's life before being part of the band, as well as how member John Deacon joined the group, but as of now, these scenes are unlikely to surface. Moomin 1969. This is a Japanese anime series based on the works of the Finnish author Tova Jansson, which ran for 65 episodes despite the series being pretty radically different from the other works of the franchise, as well as the disapproval of the original creator, which was mostly due to there being quite a few issues with the production. First of all, the artwork differed quite a bit, but also the tone was drastically different, as there were for some reason characters getting into fights, getting drunk, and even guns, stuff like that. There were some home media releases in Japan on Laserdisc and VHS, but it's unlikely it will ever be re-released because of the author's distaste for the show. However, at least most of the episodes have been found at this point, with only about 29 being lost, which is still a lot, but I'm sure fans of the show will take what they can get. Left Eye Nina. The second studio album in production by the American rap artist Lisa Lopez, also known as Left Eye, was called Nina, based on her alter ego. However, unfortunately, during the production of the album on April 25th, 2002, she was killed in a car accident, which ceased production on Nina. Although it was still going to be posthumously released by Death Row Records in October of that year, but they never actually went through with it. The only official release from the album was a song called Too Street for TV. Also, there was a re-recorded version of the song Untouchable, but besides that, the rest of the album is lost. Control Denied, When Man and Machine Collides. One of the most famous and known figures in the death metal scene is Chuck Schuldiner, who is sometimes called the godfather of death metal due to his influence on the genre, and he was part of a band called Control Denied, who launched their debut album in 1999, with the second one beginning production shortly after, although it could never be completed as Schuldiner was sadly battling with brain cancer, and died in December of 2001 at the young age of just 34. Over the years, some demo tapes have come out, but nothing really official from the album. Pokemon It's New Year's Eve 97. This is an unreleased hour-long New Year's special from 1997 for the Pokemon anime series that was set to air on December 31st between the regular schedule episodes of 39 and 40. It's thought that the episode was going to be mostly a recap though, but it couldn't air as it was pulled due to the seizure controversy with the episode Computer Warrior Porygon, and since then the episode still has never seen a release. But it's thought by some that some of its footage has been reused in other episodes and specials, such as a later New Year's special in 1999. 123509 Go. So this, according to a Lost Media Wiki subreddit post, is an interesting artistic project/video that is being referenced as heavily sexual, which is shown in a screenshot which I definitely can't show on YouTube, and the video was called 123509 Go, and was available at some point on the Richardson Mag website. Fallout New Vegas Ghoul Bounties 2. Again, not a lot to say on this one, but yeah, big fan of New Vegas, so it's cool to see some New Vegas mods on here, but we already talked about the Lost Nexus mods. I'm pretty sure anyway, that was in this series, right? I mean, at this point I'm kind of losing track, it's been going on so long. But yeah, apparently this was a mod, the second of a series of them, which I actually found a reference to on a post on the Drowned Mods subreddit that said it was so bad that it was removed by the author, which is definitely curious. However, there is gameplay footage of it done by Breach, who is a really cool Fallout New Vegas YouTuber I watched way back in the day, so good to see he's still out here making these. Gary's Mod Toy Box. Wow, speaking of nostalgia, this was an absolute blast from the past for me. Like a wave of Gmod nostalgia just hit me with this one. Basically, this was a tool featured in the game that would allow you to download stuff in your game and use it. Kind of like a precursor to the Steam Workshop, but it was like a little tab in the game that you could use and search through for different stuff. You know, guns and maps and NPCs and all that jazz. Although it was thrown out with the release of Gmod 13 in 2012 in favor of the Workshop. But with losing the toy box, quite a few add-ons were also lost as well, some of which have been found, but I'm sure others are still missing. Fascination. This has got to be Nintendo's biggest bruh moment. You guys are not even going to believe me when I tell you about this. So basically back in 1974, before the Famicom or NES or basically any of the mainstays that everyone knows, you know, the stuff that really put Nintendo on the map in terms of gaming, well back then they were actually making arcade games, one of which was called Fascination, which was a more adult themed version of a light gun shooter that they had made called Wild Gunman. But in this one, you use the gun to shoot at a woman dancing on stage, which when done correctly, I guess, when she strikes a pose, it will slowly remove pieces of her clothing until they're completely gone. Yeah. However, the game never did get finished, and luckily for Nintendo, it was never released, as it wouldn't really go over well with their family-friendly image as a company. But it's definitely interesting nonetheless. Asterisk and the Golden Sickle. This was an animated movie adaptation of a comic book of the same name from 1967, although this was the second book in the series, about the two protagonists, Obelix and Asterisk, looking for the Golden Sickle as the name suggests. However, the story goes that the animation was so bad and jarring for audiences at a test screening that even though the film was almost completed, it was outright cancelled, with the film's negatives allegedly being destroyed as well. Jeez, that's a little dramatic. So today all we really have are a couple of recovered animation cells. Pikachu Screamer. It's interesting, the surge in cases of lost Screamer videos and games, I have to think that this was mostly, or at least in part, due to that Mario Screamer one, so shout out to Marvel. But yeah, this is another one that I found a post for brought up on the Lost Media Wiki forums, where a user references another old Screamer video, saying, quote, "The video was titled something like Top 10 Strongest Pokemon or something, and for the first 9 Pokemon it was normal. I'm pretty sure there was no commentary, and the video was PowerPoint-like slides. After the second strongest Pokemon was revealed, the video showed the Scary Maze game Screamer, which caused me to run out of the room and get my dad to turn the video off. I definitely did not expect that. I found this video again after a while, but I only looked in the comments, where everyone was understandably flaming the poster. This is basically all I know about the video. I'm pretty sure I saw it in 2012 or 2013, but the video could have been uploaded earlier." Nancy Drew Mobile Mystery Shadow Ranch. So this is actually the one and only game in a planned series of iOS mobile games for Fancy Nancy Mobile Mystery. And this first game was released in February of 2011. However, as the years went on, no new releases came out in the series, and not only that, but the game began to develop issues with the newer iOS updates, eventually becoming completely incompatible. And it ended up being completely removed from the App Store in 2014. So currently the game is now lost and completely unplayable. NBA Jam Michael Jordan Edition. It's a little bit wild to even say this, but yes, in the released version of NBA Jam from 1993, Michael Jordan is notably absent, aka possibly the best basketball player of all time, and he's not in the game. Bruh. Reportedly, it was because MJ actually had some exclusive deal with Nike and so couldn't officially be a part of the game. Even still, he and a few others wanted to be in the game in some capacity, and so a version was made exclusively for them, with a very limited number of copies being made, with like 4 or 5 or something like that. So fans can only hope that one day, one of these copies might end up surfacing. You're in the Picture, Episode 2. Here we have a show that only had one episode ever air, that being in January of 1961, which was You're in the Picture, a celebrity game show hosted by actor Jackie Gleason, that involved answering historical or pop culture questions. However, even with just one episode, there was a ton of backlash, and the second already produced episode was pulled from schedule. And apparently it was so bad that the host actually did an apology for the series' quality and talked about how it was actually a failure. Wow. But that unaired second episode has yet to surface. No_2418.mpg. This is a pretty strange one here. A lost and creepy, allegedly cursed video from the Japanese site Nichan, which is described in more detail in a video by Tara A. Devlin. It's also talked about by a Japanese user who explained the video had, quote, a white wall followed by a picture of a creepy woman, the scene distorts with a man hiding his face, a man facing a computer, Japanese style room, a naked woman in a cardboard box. This repeats 2 or 3 times for about a minute. However, it seems like this could very well just be some internet urban legend. Inventio Fortunata. This is another lost piece of history, a book from possibly the 14th century, more specifically written by someone traveling in the North Atlantic region, giving descriptions of the places they visited, including the North Pole, which, despite the source of this not being found, influenced quite a bit on the understanding of geography in the area for a while. Particularly, it had a great influence on maps, although a lot about the book, including its author and when it was written, are still unknown. Fem City. So what I think this is referring to is a rather strange multiplayer game project dated 2003. And on one of the artist's websites that worked on this game, we get a bit of a better understanding on what this project really is, so I'll just read it out for you. Quote, Fem City is a simulation of complex social and economic environment, which young women find themselves in when designing their future. Fem City was commissioned by the Office of Women's Affairs, Vienna AT 2003. The game tries to encourage the gamers to consciously select between alternative lifestyles, career plans, and personal dreams. At the starting point of the game, the players are set up in an urban environment, where buildings suggestive of different careers will invite them to enter. A steady job, higher education, a trip to a Caribbean island, a dreamscape, fast and easy money without any guaranteed continuity of income, a relation, etc. During the course of the game, the players will be presented with where their decisions might lead to. A macroeconomic model computes savings and accounts for happiness, success, social commitment. The game does not want to suggest that any of the decisions made need necessarily lead to happiness or frustration, but it encourages the players to try out things with their own, or rather their avatar's life. Chance and good luck, as well as social interaction, can always lead to unexpected results. In the end, however, a few facts about economic processes, statistical data, and about alternative lifestyles should be learned. Maybe as important as that is to have been involved in a joyful learning experience, and to have had an aesthetically pleasing joyride to a para-realistic, photorealistic, or maybe unreal world. And as for the game itself, it looks like it never really got off the ground, seeing as information on it on its own is hard to come by. I Am a Taxi Driver. That is the approximate translation of this 1963 Soviet film that is said to be completely lost forever, as all of its known copies were destroyed by the Soviet government for allegedly belittling Leningrad, but other than that, we don't know too much else. Gonzalo Jimenez de Quesada Books. Here we have a Spanish figure born in 1509 that was a scholar, lawyer, and eventually a lieutenant general that contributed to the founding of the Republic of Colombia. He also went on multiple expeditions and wrote some books as depicted in this photograph. But yeah, this was obviously a long time ago, and it's likely most of his written works are gone, as the only official source attributed to him is the Anti-Jovio written in 1567. A Cruel Angel's Thesis, Spanish version. So this is the very iconic opening theme song of the 1995 anime Neon Genesis Evangelion. However, since it's so popular, it was dubbed in many different languages, including Spanish, with a dubbed opening as well, which premiered in countries like Argentina in 2003. However, it's unclear if it really was dubbed though, as there really is very little information on it, and of course, it's never been actually found online. Boards of Canada Acid Memories. Released in 1989, Acid Memories was the second album of the duo Boards of Canada, which featured 6 tracks totaling almost 33 minutes. And only about a 24-second snippet of a song called Duffy has been found as of now. Crosswit's soundtrack. This year was actually a fairly popular board game as it ran for over 1,000 episodes in its initial run, which only lasted about 5 years from 1975 to 1980, but did get a brief resurgence in 1986. The show involved contestants of normal people as well as celebrities in teams trying to solve crossword puzzles and score points for prizes. But since the show ceased airing, it's been hard to find the soundtrack of the show, which was composed by Ron Kay, Philip Springer, and Buddy Kay, which is pretty well regarded. But some pieces have actually been found, and some have been recreated, but the entire thing has not been fully compiled, it seems. Shrek Canadian accent voiceover. So fans of this iconic film series may or may not know that the changeover to the Scottish accent was actually kind of a spur-of-the-moment decision by voice actor Mike Myers, who initially when recording the character was using a Canadian accent, which he felt was missing something, and so it was taken to the DreamWorks executives who were hesitant as they would have to re-record all of his lines, but Steven Spielberg was actually on board for this change, and so they did it, which thankfully they did because I couldn't imagine it any other way. But what happened to that other voiceover? Well, add that to the seemingly endless collection of Shrek lost media. Star Fox Orchestrated Arrangement. Apparently for the very first Star Fox game released in 1993 for the SNES, an orchestral album was made by Hajime Hirasawa, who planned to release the album on its own as well, although Nintendo would not allow this, seeing as they saw it as property of themselves and not the actual composer, leading him to actually leave the company and never release it. Although a developer on the game did say that he in fact did have a copy somewhere from way back then, so it's possible there are others as well, and one day maybe it will actually be found officially. Batman Argentine Radio Show. In the 1950s in Argentina, there was a Batman radio show that is pretty obscure, or at least hard to find information on in English. Apparently it also may have starred Carlos Carella or Correa as Batman and Ricardo Bosch as Robin, but other than that I can't find much else on this topic. Queen of Poker Club. Again, another hella obscure thing here, but basically it was an unlicensed poker game for the Sega Mega Drive created by a company called Sachin, with an unknown release date of sometime in the 1990s. National Treasure 2 Book of Secrets promo game. Here is another promotional website that is missing and now just directs back to the Disney website, but in 2007 it was actually a game and contest made for National Treasure 2 in collaboration with Mercedes-Benz, where the players would look for clues using a Mercedes because of course, and the grand winner of this competition would actually receive a brand new 2008 at the time Mercedes C-Class, also filled with real historical relics and treasures curious enough. But yeah, the game and webpage are now lost media. Space School Games. So this was pretty obscure, but this was an unreleased series of games created by Konami for the Famicom, which had actually 7 different games, with 6 of them being made for schools and another for a gas company, as they were educational games, but they are so rare because they never released commercially, and so of course they're lost as well, or were, as about 3 of the 7 games have actually been found and made playable online somehow, and they can actually be accessed through the use of emulators. Disco Relax. I know I keep saying this, but this is a really obscure one here, like a real deep cut. Basically, it's some sort of program called Disco Relax that premiered on December 15th, 1994, and ceased airing in August of 2002. But, I mean, apparently it was watched by about 8 million people, so maybe it's not that obscure. And there are some clips of it on YouTube, but it was pretty hard to find, like, regular just information on this. Probably because it's a production from Poland, but yeah. Merzbow Lost Songs. Alright, it's a pretty standard affair here at this point, been over it multiple times for many artists, but yeah, this guy Merzbow, also known as Masami Akita, has been active in making music since 1979, which is a crazy long time. And he's released over 400 known recordings to this date, so yeah, definitely some lost material along the way. And he's most associated with the noise, industrial, and ambient genres, in case you were curious. Encarnaciones Bichaves. Okay, I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm saying. But anyway, this one here has a pretty wide and extensive search thanks to the Lost Media Wiki, as well as it being a part of the On the Hunt search series. Basically, it was a commercial for a flower shop in the Philippines, which, if that sounds obscure and random, well, I mean, it is, but it's notable because it was considered rather disturbing, with dark backgrounds, a creepy song, and unsettling images. And in July of 2022, the Lost Media Wiki officially launched the On the Hunt search and made this poster inquiring about its whereabouts. It's widely believed it initially aired in the mid-90s and the early to mid-2000s on a few specific Filipino channels. However, the commercial remains lost today despite the search efforts. Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll. This is a rather strange point-and-click adventure game that was in development from 1994 to 1998 by a duo of Chris Yates and John Hare, although the game was never actually released. You play as the character of Nigel, who, while in a band, also struggles with drug addiction, but at the same time is like a dealer and also part of a biker gang. Oh, and did I mention it's also an adult adventure game, in the same type as like Leisure Suit Larry. Yeah, this game sounds like an absolute trip. Sadly though, it was cancelled and all we have are a few screenshots, and this game looks wild to say the least. Luigi is f***ing missing. Yes, you heard that right. This was actually a Mario fan game in which you played as Daisy, and you basically searched for Luigi in like a parody of the game Mario is Missing, although this was a party-based RPG. And there is plenty of footage of it online, but I guess it's currently unavailable for download. Three Little Ghosts. This refers to the official English dub of an anime series with a very long name from 1992, with the plot centering around, you guessed it, 3 different ghosts, who all have different jobs and basically just live their lives. And the show was released in 1992 for home media on VHS by a company called Anchor Bay. However, it most likely didn't include all the episodes, as some are still missing from the English version, despite the show being widely available in other dubbed languages. Academy Awards Best Animation Unused Character Reactions. During the 74th Academy Awards, there were animations of the various characters from the films nominated for the Best Animated Feature Award, which is really cool, and something it would also do for the 79th in 2007. There were typically 3 animations per film, those being an announcement of their nomination, reaction to winning, and then a reaction to losing. However, of course that means there were variations according to which film actually won and which lost, and so the ones that weren't used weren't actually made available. Except for a select few, such as the winning one for Cars, as well as the winning one for Jimmy Neutron. As for the ones that are still missing though, those would be the winning animations for Monster House and Monsters Inc., as well as the losing animations for Happy Feet and Shrek. Hot Dog TV. This series of shorts featuring these creepy hot dog puppet looking things ran on Cartoon Network in 2010 briefly and then were never seen again. No home media release and no additional airings. About 12 episodes were known to have been produced, but it seems that only 4 ever aired. The first 2 episodes only having partial footage being found, and the last 2 are actually completely lost. Masked Through the Ages. Lost BBC show, 1930s, yada yada yada, you heard me say it 1,000 times, so yeah, we know why it's lost and probably gone forever, sad to say. but what it was a history program broadcast in 1937 as a 4-part series about the history of masks in ancient times. And there are some summaries and images of the program in newspapers, but no footage of any kind. McLaren MP418 footage. This is talking about the lost test footage from a McLaren Formula 1 race car developed in 2003. And there are plenty of photos circulating online of the car being tested, but not the actual footage itself, likely due to problems with the vehicle as well as some pretty brutal crashes that took place. Mr. Meaty Shorts. Mr. Meaty is definitely one of the shows of all time, and I talked about it and its weird shorts once before on the darkest episodes of kids shows and cartoons video. But yeah, it's a puppet show that ran on Nickelodeon and was known for being just pretty weird and gross. But before the show first aired in 2006, there were some shorts produced, including one I discussed in that video, where the characters put their hands in a fryer and then eat them. And apparently there are many more shorts that have yet to have been discovered. As according to a post on the Lost Media Wiki forums, there are 17 total shorts, with only 8 of them being available, as he goes on to list some of those missing shorts, as the Meatrix, McBoa, and Mind Power. So maybe these shorts are still out there recorded on someone's old VHS or something. I guess that's all we can really hope for. Advance Wars 64. Also just known as 64 Wars, is a lost and unreleased game that was shown off at Space World 1999 and had a tentative release date of January 29th, 1999. Essentially, the game itself was a 2D strategy role-playing game that would give the player a view of a map before turning into a 3D simulated battle, and was planned to allow transfer between Game Boys for a different title in the series. However, no builds have been found from this lost title. Craft World. This was a very early prototype of what would become Little Big Planet, released for the PS3. But back then, the game featured a lot more simple graphics and mechanics, at least from the looks of some of the early gameplay. But no build of this version has ever surfaced. Daredevil: The Man Without Fear. And finally, here we have the last entry, the cancelled third-person beat-em-up based on the iconic superhero, and more specifically a Frank Miller comic of the same name. The game was being developed in the early 2000s by 5000 Feet, and was meant for release on the PS2, Xbox, and PC, although the game had a very rough and troubled development and was reworked many times due to interventions by Sony and Marvel. The game was also even further expanded into an open world experience, with some pretty in-depth mechanics for the time, but eventually it just became too much, and after being delayed, it was eventually straight up cancelled, despite how far into development it actually was. And there is gameplay footage that exists, but builds of it are hard to come by and haven't popped up yet online. And that'll do it for part 4 of this insanely long series. First off here, I've got to thank you all for the support on the last one. That video did insane numbers, so thanks for watching. But shout out of course to you right now watching this video and making it to the very end. It really means a lot to me and helps grow this channel. Speaking of which, if you made it to the end, why not subscribe, help your boy get closer to 100k, you know, like the video, all that good stuff. But let me not waste too much more of your time with this outro. It's been me, sourcebrew, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, peace out.